Danish, an introductory overview. This is a Danish text. It's the beginning of a story by Robert Storm Peterson, whom I'm told is the quintessential Danish humorist. And I would like to begin this video, as I begin all of my little videos, with the task of just helping you identify and distinguish this text. This little video follows directly upon the video that we had last week for Norwegian Bokmål, which in turn was preceded by Norwegian Nynorsk. And we talked last week about how difficult it was to distinguish these two forms of these two standard orthographies for Norwegian, because they're one and the same language. They use the same alphabet, and what you need to do is, if you know nothing of the language, you just need to identify it as a librarian or some sort of intellectual detective, and you can get so far as to know that this is Scandinavian, of course, but which variety, which variant. I suggested that what you could do is look for a word that you would find on every single page, and that might be the indefinite articles, short little words that begin in Norwegian Bokmål with our two-letter words, en or et, where that e is diphthongized into ei in Nynorsk. So if you can find that word on a page, you know you're looking at Nynorsk. If you can find this word on a page, you know that you are looking at Bokmål. But as we discussed last time, also Norwegian Bokmål and Danish were literally one and the same written language until 1907, when some spelling reforms set this apart from this, and it is every bit as difficult to distinguish these two, identify these two, as it is to distinguish the two forms of Norwegian for each other. I would suggest, along those same grounds, that if you know nothing of the languages, but you can just identify them as Scandinavian, and you want to know which variety, which is Danish, which is Norwegian, what you can do is the same thing as for the two Norwegians. Let's look for a little word that you're going to find on every single page of text, and that's distinct. And in that case, it's not the definite articles, but the equivalent of the preposition of, which in Danish is written af. It's really pronounced more like a here, and whereas in Norwegian, Bokmål, it's written as an av. So that's one little thing that you can scan the page for. It's going to be on any given page of text, that preposition, a number of times. But in the odd case that it's not, if you just want to have another check without knowing the language, another thing that you might look for would be frequently the form of the accusative or the oblique form, the reflective form of pronouns, my, deg, and sei. In Danish, they're written with an I, whereas last week we saw this Norwegian text. They're written with an E, sei, versus sei here. So that's probably enough for if you don't know the languages at all and you just need to identify them. But what if you do? You still might find yourself, when you pick up a text and you're able to read Scandinavian and you want to know which sound, which sort of voice you should have buzzing in your head as you read silent to yourself, and that's what we're going to spend most of our time today, looking at the different sound of Danish. Some other distinctions that will jump to your eye to help you identify yourself as you're reading might be, for example, well, some of them are that this character here, the A and the E combined into one letter, that's just much more common in Danish. We have it 4 times, I guess, on this little random sample, whereas in last week's sample we only had it 1 time in Norwegian. That's usually just written with a simple E. Some other things that might grab your eye are Danish has a lot of D inserts, kind of. They're the original spelling. I think in Norwegian these are generally taken out and maybe either written with a double letter, funnet, that would be double N probably, or besto is just the D is taken out. And since we're talking about Ds, I would say that's the thing that strikes me the most, is the difference between Danish and Norwegian, is that final consonants or medial and final consonants tend to be devoiced quite often. In they're voiced in Danish and they're devoiced in Norwegian. So here, for example, well, we had Bokmål itself is written with a K. Here's that word G in Danish. I think that's probably what strikes me the most. But I'm going on, and I need to read this text to you and analyze it. So the main difference between Danish and Norwegian is certainly not in the writing. They're very hard to distinguish. They're perfectly mutually intelligible. I imagine Danes and Norwegians themselves, rather than looking for these minor spelling differences, would be struck by lexical differences, which are probably not such that they would impede their understanding, but rather that they would just be, you have synonyms in every language, and probably just the first choice is different in some cases between the two of them, or the word that's actually used is somewhat dialectical in the other. But I think that's enough about distinguishing them. What do they sound like? Well, I told you that Norwegians and Swedes, they speak with what is literally a mild form of a tonal language, a sing-song language, whereas Danish is utterly different from that. Danish, every textbook I've ever seen authored by a Dane has a section in it where they're sort of aware that their language sounds a little bit strange, a little bit funny. It's got a totally different base of articulation or focus or locus of articulation. It's very guttural. It's in the back of the throat when you speak Danish, or when I try to imitate it or mime it. Not that I do it at all well. What I need to do is almost contract my diaphragm and sort of hold my air in and speak very much from the back of my throat, as if part of my mouth is almost slightly numb or paralyzed. And it's strangely not difficult to do that, but it does produce an odd sound. Again, mine is not at all exemplary, but I think it probably sounds something like this. Luther siger, at visse individer har fundet deres helvede allerede i dette liv, læste min ven Herbert en bog af Strindberg. Vi sad i hans store, hyggelige stue. Men vent lidt, lad mig se. Jeg har jo den bog, hvor Luther siger disse ord. Lad mig nu se. Her må den stå i den tyske reol. Han søger i mange minutter. Men bogen er det ikke. Ja da, siger han så og sætter sig. Den hører altså til før istiden. Før istiden, spørger jeg. Ja, jeg kalder det for istiden. Det var nemlig en gang, at jeg opdagede, at en masse af mine allerbedste bøger var væk. Det var lånt ud, og jeg havde glemt at skrive op til hvem jeg havde lånt dem. That means Martin Luther says at that visse, certain individuals have funnet, found their helvede, hell, allerede, already, in dette, this, life, læste, read, my, ven, friend, Herbert, in a book, of Strindberg, we sat in his store, big, hyggelige, comfortable stue, living room, but vent, wait, lidt, a little bit, let me, se, see, I, have, jo. That's an untranslatable little word. It's very colorful in Danish. It can mean lots of things. Probably means best here, indeed, I'm certain. Den, that, the book. I certainly have that book. Where Luther says these words. I'm getting cut off with time a little bit early today. I'll just keep going until I